All right, hello everyone. Welcome back to the Art of Awesomeness podcast. I'm your host, Adrian Kiswani. This is episode 87. This is definitely more of an update episode, and I'm going to keep this pretty much as brief as I can because I don't know if you can tell by my voice or not, but I'm kind of in the midst of a fever right now. I'm not feeling the greatest, kind of getting over an illness. And so I apologize if my voice doesn't sound the best right now, but I'm working with what I got here. So with that, we got the national days, which is Happy National World Environment Day, National Veggie Burger Day, National Moonshine Day, and National Gingerbread Day. Those are all the national days. Hopefully you guys can celebrate one of those. Gingerbread Day seems a bit off. I feel like that would be in December or something. But hey, I guess it's winter somewhere in the world. Probably. I might be completely wrong about that. I'm sorry. But yeah, this episode is definitely more of an update. Reason being is because I told you guys that whenever I do decide to end the podcast, which in previous episodes I said have been soon, I would let you guys know. I wouldn't just leave you guys hanging and leave you questioning where the episodes went or anything like that. I would let you know when the podcast was ending. So this is not the last episode of the podcast. Next episode, episode 88, which is the season finale of season 4, will be the last episode. I had considered ending the podcast episode 100, but as far as my current situation, I don't think that that's going to be at least the best course of action. I think that it's better if I stop the podcast at episode 88, which is next episode. Now, kind of explain some of my reasonings here. For any of those of you who have stuck with the podcast for a considerable amount of time, I don't want this to be a jarring kind of an episode. It's definitely a decision that's been made with a considerable amount of forethought. And that is to not say, man, I'm sorry, my words. I'm sorry, guys. That isn't to say that the actual, or should I say, a podcast will not continue, because I do plan on creating a entirely new podcast. So podcasting, YouTube, content creating, I don't plan on stopping anytime soon. To be honest, this very podcast was kind of in many ways a test run to see if I could be consistent with uploading videos week after week. As of this episode, 87 consecutive weeks of constantly putting out content. And so, it was definitely more of a challenge for myself to see what I could do, with a certain level of dedication. And I'm very happy with, the support that we've gotten on this podcast, and the fact that we haven't missed an upload. In all the weeks, we had never missed an upload, and I'm very happy about that fact. It's a very satisfying thing to look and scroll on the YouTube homepage of our channel and to see video after video, just one right after the other. It's as a content creator, it's a very satisfying thing to see your work all laid out over the course of over a year. So as far as content creation, I do not plan on stopping. To be honest with all of you, this is more so of a step off point, of a beginning, if you will, as far as YouTube and as far as content creation, podcasting, anything of that sort. I really just wanted to be able to see if I could even pull something like that off, and I have. Both Christian and I, started this podcast really hoping to make something of it. And obviously, Christian took some time off of the podcast, so he, I don't remember which episode was his last episode, but let's see, which was it? I actually have my homepage pulled up here. 78. Okay, so as of the end of this podcast, episode 88, he hasn't been here in about 10 episodes. But yeah, what was that? We check our mental health. Yeah, 2 months ago. But it was definitely a challenge to see what we could do and what we were capable of. And we're both very happy with what the podcast taught us in regards to just a work ethic, I guess you could say, maintaining consistency on a project and constantly brainstorming and branding and all of that stuff. I mean, we learned a lot from this podcast, and for that, I'm forever grateful. But as far as the future is concerned, I do plan on starting a new podcast. So for any of those of you who are, maybe a bit kind of uncomfortable with the idea of this podcast just ending and there being no more content creation from our end, there will for sure be more for that. I can pretty much promise that a YouTube presence will not fade. I definitely plan on making a new podcast, YouTube channel, and uploading and things of that nature. But at least for me at this point, I think that a perhaps 1-2 month break and brainstorming would be useful in trying to kind of revamp the podcast, revamp kind of the YouTube social media presence to try and maximize it to the best of our ability. Again, this has taught us a lot about social media, a lot about maintaining consistency and building an audience. And so I definitely plan on using what I've learned to try and create a even more successful endeavor for the future of a podcast, of a YouTube channel. Now, some of you might be wondering, well, there have been guests that have been promised to be on the podcast. When will all of these guests that you've been talking about be on the podcast? And the reason I haven't invited any guests as of recently onto the podcast is because for any of those of you who go on our homepage, you'll notice that the views of our podcast and the listeners have been going down in the past few months. From a technical standpoint, you could say that this is a downhill, or it's a podcast or a channel that's kind of on the decline. So, when I bring friends of mine or people I haven't spoken to in a long time on the next podcast, which is what I'm planning on doing, I didn't really want to kind of shove a bunch of guests on at the very end of a declining podcast. That's not really what I wanted to do. So whenever I do create the next podcast channel and the next podcast is announced, then that is a podcast where all of the guests will finally be able to have their own episodes, and we'll be bringing a bunch of different people on. I do not know what the next name of the podcast is going to be, so I would appreciate any input in the comments or DMs as to what I should title the next podcast. I have some ideas right now, but they're still kind of just in the brainstorming phase. I haven't really had a whole lot of time to consider it. But yeah, that's kind of just the general update of what's been going on. I've watched a lot of YouTubers in the past, and whenever a big shift comes, or they decide to leave a platform, or I don't know, delete a channel or something like that, it can be a bit jarring for the viewers. And so I really don't want this to be a very jarring thing. So for any of those of you who follow me on Instagram, which is just my name, it's just Adrian Kiswani, it's nothing fancy, I will be updating on that platform specifically as to when the next podcast is going to be announced, and the first episode of that podcast will be dropping. And also, I am planning on this Art of Awesomeness podcast channel on YouTube to make a video basically directing you guys to the new channel, to the new podcast, which again might be not within days or weeks. It'll probably be a few months. So just know that that's kind of roughly the time frame we're working at. So if it's a few weeks and you're like, oh man, where's the new podcast? Where's the new channel? Just know it's probably going to be, we're talking months, probably not so much weeks. I do plan on creating a new podcast as soon as I possibly can, but I do want to make sure that it is I definitely want it to be a step up from this podcast production wise. I don't really have the means now to really have a constant place of, making YouTube videos. I'm going to be moving locations in the next coming months. So there's definitely going to be a bit of a transitional period in my life in the next coming months that might make it a bit difficult for me to land on one specific location to have guests and record podcast episodes and make sure that we got mics, hooked up and lights and cameras and all that stuff. So I'm still brainstorming, still trying to figure things out to make sure that it is the best for you guys as it can possibly be. I am definitely passionate about podcasting. I definitely am passionate about just content creation in general. It's something that I've wanted to do since I was very young, and it means a lot to me to do this stuff, and I've learned a lot from it. Just making thumbnails and editing videos for you guys, even just recording them, it definitely is a highlight to my weeks. It's a highlight in my day. So, and hearing feedback from you guys and interacting with you guys, knowing that I was able to cover topics that you guys wanted me to cover, really, it makes me feel a lot better about the podcast, knowing that it's actually benefiting people who watch it, whether it's for entertainment, whether it's for education, even if it's just for background noise. You want something in the background and you pop on one of our podcasts, that's awesome. But it's definitely been quite a while that we've been going at this podcast, and as far as from a creator standpoint, I've been noticing a bit of stagnation as far as the content is concerned. I still manage to create content every single week, but I feel as though it's not maybe up to par with what I'm capable of producing. I feel as though at the probably more so in the beginning episodes of the podcast, we had a bit more of a vision. Christian and I have talked about this before in the past, that we had a bit more direction in the beginning episodes. I would say probably episode 1 to episode 30, 31, something like that. I think the episode with Lucas Martin, a good friend Lucas Martin, that was kind of one of the ones where we had a good amount of success on that episode. It's, of course, great to talk to Nick, Tucker, Lucas, all those guys. But yeah, I mean, every single episode we have a blast making, and it's great to make content. But I do feel on a personal level that we do have the potential to make an even more successful podcast with an even more kind of clear direction and vision. And it's just my personal opinion that I think that as far as podcasting goes, I think as far as content creation goes, we can do a whole lot better. And sometimes to create a new project, and sometimes to go on to a new chapter, you have to close the old one. And so I'm not ending this podcast with any sense of bitterness or but I'm glad that's done. It's actually been a bit of a tough decision for me to decide to end the podcast, episode 88, which again will be next episode. This isn't the last episode. Next episode will be the last one, for any of you wondering. But in this episode, I just kind of wanted to cover the reasons as to why next episode will be the last episode, and to kind of give you guys a week's notice, a heads up, so you guys aren't super jarred when episode 88 comes. It's like, oh yeah, it's the end of the podcast, and you're like, wait, what? So I wanted to make this as kind of a preface to next episode, so that you guys are in the loop, that you guys know what's going on. This channel, my Instagram, are probably the best places to stay updated as far as the creation of a new podcast, a new channel. So if you are interested in supporting us still on as far as the podcast is concerned, and as far as the new podcast is concerned, I would definitely recommend keeping up in those two places. You don't even have to subscribe or follow, but if you want to just kind of check back there every now and then to see if there's anything new, if you're really interested in the podcast and that sort of a thing, then I would recommend those two places is probably the best ones to get the information the quickest. You'll probably circulate through other means like my friends' Instagrams and stuff, but if you want like direct and immediate kind of info regarding this stuff, those are probably the two best places. And of course, the website. If you want to go to the website, that's also a really good place to kind of get updates. But yeah, I'm probably going to end this podcast before my voice gives out. But I just want to say thank you guys so much for sticking with us in this podcast for as long as you have. If you've made it to episode 87, over a year since the beginning of this podcast, I wholeheartedly salute you. Thank you so much for supporting us all this way. I really appreciate it. I know Christian, although he's been absent, definitely really appreciates it. And I just want to say thank you. I really appreciate you guys. Really appreciate you guys reaching out and supporting the podcast as long as you have. I really look forward to making a new podcast, a new channel, and I do hope that you guys will be there to support that as well. I do plan on making it a level up from this one, so you can expect better quality, perhaps longer episodes or something of that nature. Again, I'm still brainstorming ideas, but if you guys have any ideas that you want to pitch to me, by all means, DM me. I'm free to hear any information that you guys have, so definitely reach out, and I'll hear any advice that you guys have on the matter. But yeah, with that, I guess thank you so much for listening to this brief 87th episode, and I look forward to seeing you in the last episode of the podcast, episode 88, season 4 finale. Again, thank you so much for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next episode. Take care.